Energy Radio, Jay Weidner. Hey, Jay, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on the show again. I had so much fun with you the last time talking about 2012, which we might talk about again. I don't know. It could happen. But another new film. You guys are just busy putting out, interesting and informative material for people.
Yeah, that's our mission statement. We're trying to put out things that no one else will produce, and put it out in a high quality manner so that people like us have something to watch too.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah.
You mean you don't watch like Seinfeld and, well, I guess that's not on the air anymore. I mean, I don't even watch half of that stuff. If it's not Discovery Channel or History Channel and, some pyramid thing or something, it's not on TV. Or the TV's not on.
I don't watch too much TV anymore because it's just the same old, but I love to watch DVDs and movies and things, and so I decided that, we're at 10-year anniversary right now, that we're going to make, maybe it's just a small audience of who knows how many people there are in the market, but we just rather sell high-quality product to a smaller market than a low-quality product to a larger market. It's just how it is.
But that's great. So your new film, Infinity, it's Infinity, the Ultimate Trip. I love the title. In a nutshell, what's it about? I mean, because obviously we're going to explore it much deeper, but what is Infinity, and what does that have to do with a trip?
Well, I think that basically what happened was my mother died, and in 2002, late 2002, and I, thought I was a fairly, metaphysical person, and that I could, help her through her transition, and I couldn't. No matter what I told her, no matter how logical I sounded, there was no way to get around the fact that she was scared to death. And literally, and she did everything she could to keep herself alive, which actually I believe shortened her life. And the doctors are just a bunch of idiots, as far as I'm concerned. And they killed her early, I believe, with chemo. And so I decided, I was talking to Alberto Violdo, who's a good friend of mine, and we were having dinner maybe a year later or something, and I was telling him about all my problems with my mother dying, and he'd had similar problems when his brother had died. And so we said, well, why don't we make a film that shows people an alternative view of what happens when we die, as opposed to what we get in this world in our Western society, which is fear and judgment and all these terrible things. And let's go interview people who've had near-death experiences. Let's compare notes. Let's get some experts like Brian Weiss, who's the head of the psychiatric division at Miami University Hospital, and who also believes and teaches afterlife practices with his patients. We'll get the experts, and we'll see if we can make a film which actually makes people not afraid of death, or at least tries to make them not afraid. And so that was the purpose of the film, and we showed it to a lot of people who were in hospices and people who were older. And the focus groups came back just overwhelmingly positive, that people, really like the film, and they want to show it to their family members and to people who are approaching death themselves. And I guess that's the best reviews I could get. Are people who were on the edge of death and who watch it and said it made them feel better and made them feel more courageous, which is also another reason why I wanted to personally make the film, was because one of the things that kind of irritates me about what I see in America and in the world today is a lot of unneeded fear is everywhere. And I don't see how it does anyone any good to be so afraid of everything that moves. And so I wanted to show, since all fear is basically based on this idea that we're living a finite life and that we live in a finite world, I kind of wanted to show that that's not true. We live in an infinite world with infinite possibilities, and there's no reason to be afraid of anything. And I think that if we finally get to the stage where we're not afraid of anything, then real, true change in this world can start. But I don't think it's going to start if we're all in a complete panic state, worrying about every little tiny thing that comes along. Everything is a terrorist act. Every single storm is a sign that the end of the world is at hand. Every show on TV is about the end of the world. Everything is about the end of the world. It's like, oh my God, we're all going to be so disappointed when the world doesn't end and we still have to be here trudging through life, you know. And believe me, it's not going to end. It's not that easy.
But if it does, you won't be scared to make that transition because they watched your movie.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I'm forgetting his name. He's in the movie. He's a professor. His daughter is a big actress. I'm forgetting her name too. Who's the famous actress whose dad is in our movie? Anyway.
Robert Thurman?
Thurman, yes.
Well, I'm sitting here with the video here going.
With Uma Thurman's father, Robert Thurman, who's a great Buddhist scholar. He says in the movie, there's no way that you're getting out of here dead. It's not that easy. You don't get to come to this world, screw everything up, and then die and get out of it. It's just not going to happen that way. And there's karma, and there's all sorts of things that happen, and it's a larger world, and we're not really facing it in the West. And it's one of the things I want to do is just break open the whole paradigm of death and life and fear and love, and let's just really, really get it going here. And let's do it now, and because time is running out for this particular age, as you already know with the 2012 stuff. And, it's hallelujah. This age is finally coming to an end. Now, what world are we going to make? That's really my concern now, is no longer arguing with people about whether this age, this particular time period is coming to an end. I already know it is, and people who are sensitive to these things already know it is. So then what is the next question? And the next question is, okay, what kind of world do we want to make on the other side? And Infinity was really my first salvo into getting a discussion going about what kind of world we want when we get to the other side.
Cool. One of the things that I was, thrilled with is you had, mega good people in this movie, and I'm just going to kind of put this out there. So in the movie, you had Neil Donald Walsh, Daniel Brinkley, who we'll talk about him, Greg Brandon, Alberto Villado, however you say his name, John Holland, Brian Weiss, some other people's names who I can't pronounce, and then Renate Dollinger. Was she the artist lady?
Yes, she was great.
She was so cute. But, I mean, just the collection of people that you got to talk about these things. Oh, I have a question, because you said these people had near-death experiences. Did Neil Donald Walsh have a near-death experience? It wasn't clear whether that was his experiences that he shared in the movie were a meditative experience or a near-death experience, because they were very similar.
Well, they were, and it's a great question, and I tried to show that it's possible to, in the movie we have the Buddhist scholar Dugson Punlap, and he shows that even when you're going to sleep, you're kind of going into a kind of a near-death experience, even by going to sleep at night, and you can actually use it to practice near-death. And I think that that's what Neil experienced, was a near-death experience via being upset by having a fight with his wife and then going to sleep. And they do it in the Tibetan practices. They actually do these kinds of sleeping practices to get ready for death. So in a way, that's what it is too. When you go to sleep, you knock yourself out, and then you wake up, and it's another day, and sort of life and death is very similar to that, in which, we die and we wake up in possibly another dimension or back here. And so I think that's what he was doing. It was a near-death experience brought on by tension, suddenly putting someone into a sleepy state in which the real world becomes obvious, which is, of course, what dreams are. A lot of dreams, not all dreams, but a lot of dreams are really about this voyage to another universe, another world, which is like maybe parallel to ours. So you have things in dreams which are similar to what's going on in your life, but there's odd peculiarities which are impossible, like anti-gravity and being able to fly and all these other things. And so dreams are really a combination of a fifth-dimensional matrix intermixed with our 3D, 4D matrix, which is the world that we live in. Humans are really kind of caught in between the third and the fourth dimension. Our feet are on the ground in the third dimension, but our head is in the sky in the fourth dimension, bringing down ideas and perceptions and things, which I don't think we probably share with the animal world, except for possibly dolphins and some dogs and some higher intelligent animals. But that's what this is about. So what happens when you escape? Well, we have the Hindus tell us that we are tethered to a higher dimension via a small channel which runs down from this higher dimension into our pineal gland. This channel is called the Sushumna, and this Sushumna is like 1/4000th the width of a human hair. And that's the tunnel that we go through when we die or when we dream. And what happens when you die is, and this is going to be in the sequel to Infinity, is the third-dimensional matrix, which is also mixed with the fourth-dimensional matrix, begins to fold in on itself. And it folds in, and then it collapses into the Sushumna, or this tiny tunnel. And your life essence moves up this Sushumna back into the higher matrix. And this is what people see when they see this tunnel of light, which, even like Hieronymus Bosch and did a painting of it 300 years ago. Many people have reported this tunnel, not just in the movie Infinity, but many people throughout life, including a CBS reporter who'd had a near-death experience a couple of years ago after he was hit by an IDE bomb in Iraq. So these things are well known. Even Plato tells a story of a Greek soldier who got killed in battle died for a half hour and went up this tunnel and met his family and the angels. And these stories are replete through history. It's not some fantasy. Another study, which is very interesting, was done by a scientist whose name escapes me at the moment, but he interviewed little children who had not had a chance to be influenced by stories like this. They were too young when they had their near-death experiences, and by God, they had the same exact experiences as older people had, i.e., feeling like their body was collapsing in on itself, rolling up through the Sushumna, and heading towards the infinite. And I think that's it's a continuous story heard everywhere, and I think at a certain point, walks like a duck, talks like a duck. It's a duck, and so there is no death. There is, but you are going to have to go through a life review. And I think that a lot of people find that aspect of this whole experience a little unsettling, because the
okay. So Jay, let me interrupt you here for a second. We'll come back to life review because we definitely need to talk about that, because that I think is fascinating. I want to talk about the tunnel a second, because one of the things that I believe is that there's our energy bodies, the etheric body, the mental body, the causal body, blah, 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 and they're connected to each other via the chakras. And I believe that the chakras actually sit in the body, and then the nadis, the channels that connect them to each other, are kind of like these little wormhole things. Couldn't this tunnel be like a wormhole that's actually taking us from the physical dimension into a different energy? You know, we're just collapsing in because we no longer need to be trapped here in the physical plane anymore.
I think that's exactly right. I think we're basically what it is, it's like a spark between two wires, and this Sushumna is like a wire that, it's not a wire really, but I mean, just using this metaphorically, that comes down, probably attracted to the earth by gravity, and when it gets close to the surface of the earth, there's a spark between the Sushumna and the surface of the earth as it grounds itself. That spark is us. That's living people, trees, animals. These are these little sparks that exist, and they're effervescent, they're ephemeral, they don't last long, they're here, they burn bright, and they go out quick. And that's what life is. And when that spark burns out, it doesn't really burn out, it just collapses back into the wire or the Sushumna, which begins to pull off from the surface and re-immerse the self back into the universal matrix and whatever that is. And so, yeah, I think you're exactly right. This tunnel is a very viable link between dimensions, and I think it's very, very interesting, actually, and how the Hindus and the Buddhists and even the Egyptians all kind of have the same point of view on this whole thing. I think at a certain point, you just can't argue with it.
So we just got a question in the chat room that directly ties to this. It's from Yogi Billy, and he says, how might string theory play with the energy flow in the Nadi chakra and between planes?
Well.
Is this a plant? You know Yogi Billy?
No, I don't. Maybe I do. I don't know. Well, that's really good, because string theory is sort of this same thing. So we have to realize that this matrix is a torus, like a donut, and it revolves in and out of itself. It folds down into itself, collapses down into a spiral in the middle of it, and then as it comes out the South Pole, it begins expanding again, going around the outside sphere like a donut, coming up to the North Pole, and there it begins collapsing down. And that little center point of this donut, at the very center, is this vortex. And that vortex is three-dimensional life. The outer donut is the fourth-dimensional world, time and space. But the very center is where everything is collapsed and where gravity is at its highest. That is where physical matter begins and ends. So when you look at a tree, you can see that the central vortex of this donut-shaped torus runs right down the trunk of the tree. It runs right down the center of our spine. The difference between humans and other animals is that we have been gifted with a spine that sits completely vertical, and so it can attenuate with the outer matrix in a way that no other animal can really do. And so this is why you have to stand up straight, why in yoga you're taught to keep your spine straight, why you do Tai Chi or Qigong or any of these things are all there to teach you how to keep your spine straight so that you can attenuate with the Sushumna flow from the outer matrix. This is where creativity comes from. This is where thoughts come from, where art comes from, where religion comes from, where science comes from, where everything comes from is this downflow from this outer matrix into 3D matter, which sits at the center of the torus. Now, when you pass out of this world, you're really not really passing out of the universe. You're merely passing out of a phase within the torus. You're moving from 3D to 4D to possibly 5D, 60, and 7D worlds in which the body doesn't matter, but consciousness is everything. So what is this place, And the answer is that this place is where higher dimensional frequencies can slow down long enough to actually begin to make conscious, cohesive sense of the universe, so that when we're thrust back into higher levels, higher dimensions, we will know what is going on more for having descended down into 3D. And this is what the Hindus teach. They say that you can escape this world once you understand this world. And this is what the Gnostics taught in Europe and in the Middle East 2,000 years ago, that only through gnosis, only through knowledge of this world can you escape this world. Now, I'm not saying that you want to escape the world. I'm saying because that's not the point. The point is to stay here long enough to learn everything about this world, and then escape will just naturally occur because you know everything about this world and you don't need to come back here anymore. But there are a multitude and infinite amount of worlds, and this is just one of them. And that should give us, great pause here, optimistic pause, because that's a wonderful thing to know that there's a multitude of multiverses and that we are all part of it, and we're kind of graduating and moving slowly up the ladder towards reunification with the one, I believe, at the final end. But that's a long time from now. It's not going to happen quick. There's no quick fixes, and there's no way you're getting out of here dead. So you need to take a deep breath and learn to love it.
But I mean, I would say that the majority of people on the planet, all right, in the United States, I'll even make it a smaller group, aren't even aware. I mean, there's just the basic assumption that, you die, your body goes in a box, and you go to heaven, and that's the end of the game. There's not any kind of reincarnation or any responsibility. I mean, I was brought up Catholic, 3 seconds before you die, the priest comes, you tell him a couple of sins, they say, okay, say a Hail Mary, and then and you go to heaven, no big deal.
Yeah, it's a free pass. I was raised
Catholic. But it's not sounding like that's the reality of the reality that you're sharing.
No, the Catholics have a certain take, which is not altogether wrong. I mean, I've been given last rites. I almost died once. I had a priest give me last rites, and I was fully assured in my 12-year-old body that, I was headed straight to Jesus and everything was fine. And I guess there was a level of comfort in that, although to be frank with you, it scared the living hell out of me as a 12-year-old being given last rites. And so I think, the problem with the Catholics is that they threw the baby out with the bathwater, and they got rid of reincarnation, about 400 A.D. with the Council of Nicaea, and it was a part of Christian doctrine all the way up until Constantine threw it out. And Constantine, frankly, he threw it out because the doctrine of reincarnation states that you've got to pay for everything that you did while you were alive through karma, and he had done so many terrible things that he didn't want to come back because he was so afraid that. So he threw the whole doctrine out, and with that doctrine being thrown out, at that time, all those years ago, what they did was that they retarded us spiritually, and that's what we are right now. We're spiritually retarded because we think we're only here once. We can grab everything we want to grab now. We don't have to worry about any consequences for anything that we do. And if you're a Christian, well, all you have to do is believe in Jesus. You get a free get out of jail card, and None of that is true. I'm sorry. None of that is true. It doesn't fit with any kind of fairness or spiritual logic or anything. And it has caused the problems in the world that we have today, where no one cares about the future. Everyone's just damaging themselves, their loved ones, the planet. And it's like a monster running ramshackle all over the landscape, busting the place up, and because we've become so disconnected, and then of course at the end of this thing is death, the finality of death, in which you're not going to be able to take your money with you, you're not going to be able to take your memories with you, you're not going to be able to take anything with you. And this is an incredibly cynical attitude which has permeated the entire Western culture and which is now threatening to spread outwards. And it has to be stopped, because it is not just threatening spiritually, it's now beginning to threaten us physically with the destruction of the environment and the overwhelming greed some people have, in which, you just got to have to ask the question, when is enough? When is 800 billion like enough money for one person to have? And what did they do to get that money? And these are questions which, well, we'll ask later.
Yeah. Well, and actually, why don't we come back? Somebody asked in the chat room, is there such a thing as collective karma? And is it just movie Infinity, The Ultimate Trip? And if you want more information about the movie and his other movies, go to www.sacredmysteries.com. So before the break, we were talking about what we're doing to ourselves and the karma that we're potentially incurring. And there was a question in the chat room about the concept of collective karma. And then there was a second part, is it generational or ethnic? And what do you think? I mean, are we, because I think everybody is familiar with the concept of individual karma. Well, all right, not everybody. I am, you are. My listeners, I'm sure, are. And so there's that aspect, but can we create karma on a collective level? I've never even thought about that.
Well, I think that's probably, I think it's true. You can, and I think you can also shed karma on a collective level. And I think that, we're headed towards if you don't stand up when you see something going wrong, your karma is affected. And if you don't say something when the powers that be tell you to do something because you're afraid of something, or you're afraid you're going to die, or you're afraid of something, well, you're now as responsible as they are for it. So this is something that we have to think about. This is one of the reasons why I'm trying to get people not to be afraid, because if we decide to attack a country and a great many of the people that are in the country do not stand up against this, then you are now part of the evil that designated the war. And we need to say no. We're not doing that anymore. We're not going to allow ourselves to be part of a culture that does these things. And we have to reject them, and we have to reject the culture. And it's not just their policies; it's their food, it's their television shows, it's everything that they're doing that we find repugnant. And if you go along to get along, or get along to go along, well, it's not that easy. Your karma is still affected, and so we need to, as I like to say, create a parallel culture to the one that we're living in right now. And and by example, we will change the world. But if you're trying to get Joe Sixpack to change on his own by talking to him or anything, that's not going to work. Joe Sixpack only wants to see results. And so we need to create a parallel society, a parallel culture with shows like this and movies like Sacred Mysteries are putting out, in which we present a positive view and also a rejection of the negative aspects of the culture we were living in. And this is what 2012 is really about. It's about us collectively deciding what kind of world we're going to be living in. And right now, we're not making real good decisions here. You know, we're getting awarded
But we're
Nobel
not
Peace
making
Prizes.
decisions. Jay, we're not making decisions. It's, you know, I was listening to the news right after the election, and, you know, there was all this commentary of, well, you elected these people into office, and, you know, if you don't like what they're doing, elect other people into office. And so, okay, so that all happened. Different people got elected into office, and they're still doing the same thing that the old people did. So nothing really changed. It just has new faces.
Yeah.
And I think people, in the general sense, don't know how to facilitate that, don't know how to make those changes, because what they're taught is, you go and elect a new representative. You go and do this thing, because I think people feel like they're not being heard. I mean, you
yeah.
you talk about health care, and it's like they're not being heard. So, you know, it's
well, they're not, and
frustrating.
I think well, it is, and I think that's the mistake we're making. We have what I call, in the West, we have this tremendous Messiah complex, where we're just sitting around waiting for the Messiah to come. And it might be Jesus, or it might be the aliens, or it might be Obama, or it might be Sarah Palin. Who knows? But everybody's thinking that there's going to be somebody coming to save them. And there isn't anyone coming to save us. No one, nothing is going to save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to get out of this psychological trap that we've been put in, where something from without will magically come like John Wayne at the end of the movie and save everybody. And it isn't going to happen. And very bright people keep getting caught up in this thing. And I saw it with Obama, and I said, you know, Obama can't change this world. You know, he's a great symbol for change, but as soon as he gets into office, he's going to be caught up in the same psychological traps that everybody else has been caught up in politics. And we just have to simply say, guess what? We're not even going to vote for anyone that you put up, because we don't believe in anything that you're doing anyway. And when we do that, when we have the courage to say no. You know, there's a great scene in the movie Gandhi where Trevor Howard, I think is his name, great British actor. He's the general of the British forces, and he's all dressed up in his uniform, you know, with his riding crop and his hat and his medals. And he walks up to Ben Kingsley, who's meditating on the floor, you know, Gandhi, and he says, "Well, you just don't expect us to walk out of India, do you?" And Gandhi looks up and goes, "Oh, no. You could take a carriage or a boat. There's many ways to leave India, and you know, that's how we have to be." It's like, you know, you don't expect us to just do this, do you? Well, yeah, actually, we do. We do expect you to start following the things that we want instead of just following what you want. And we're trapped in this thing. We're so afraid we're going to lose everything, including our lives, that we're and instead of doing anything, we've conveniently fallen into a system of the Messiah complex, where the Messiah is going to come, he's going to save us all, and we don't have to do one damn thing. And it's just not true. I'm not saying that there isn't, you know, avatars, and I'm not saying anything about Jesus or even aliens or Obama. I'm talking about the psychological attitude which freezes us in the moment, thinking that something is going to happen when it isn't. And I think we've been fooled enough. I mean, haven't we? We've been waiting and waiting for anything. I think Obama put the knife into the Messiah complex in a lot of ways, because a lot of people are now realizing that, you know, even though he had a good message and even though he had the oratory skills, he too is caught in the trap and he can't get out of it. And he knows it, and we know that he knows it now. And now he can get the same week that he gets the Nobel Peace Prize, he escalates the war in Afghanistan by 40,000 troops, and there isn't anyone like with their jaw agape going, what in the world is going on here? And Obama's caught in that dilemma between what he said and what he probably believes and the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is that he's going to get in big trouble if he doesn't escalate with the military. Well, you know what he should do? He should just pull out. He should just pull out of both wars and see what happens. Begin creating the parallel universe right now, but he can't. And it doesn't come from above anyway. It comes from below, and it's going to be up to us. And it's my number one goal at this point in time is to try to get everyone to realize that it's up to them, and that you guys need to start taking care of yourselves and your family. You need to start thinking about Terence McKenna used to say that, it confounded me when he said it. It took me 15 years to figure out what he meant. But he used to say all the time that we must live as if the apocalypse has already occurred. And I thought, what? What does that mean? But now I get it. It's like, in order to show the world how to live rightly, we need to start living as if that world has already ended and that our world has begun. And when we do that single act of living in the world that's coming and rejecting the world that is right now, they will follow us. We will be the leaders. And I don't think we're that far from this. I think there's a radical break going on everywhere, in all places, all at once. It's almost like a spiritual renaissance, which is going to give us courage and strength to move beyond the failed world of the past and create the world that we want. And all the children of the 60s like me, this is what we've been dreaming about for years. So we should just embrace this. And another thing I want to say is people who are my age or older, who went through the 60s and somehow survived, we have to become the elders that we never had. And the young kids are really looking for some kind of wisdom out of us, and I'm afraid we're not really doing a very good job of helping them. And so I'm kind of calling forth on everyone who is, above 50, who went through the world and has come out of it somewhat enlightened, to maybe you should start helping out those people in your area that are in their 20s that are really looking for some wisdom, spiritual wisdom, and also physical wisdom as to how they're going to get through the transition, which is about to happen. And so, I'd like to talk about that transition at some point, where what is going to happen here, and what is it that we should be getting ready for, because it's vitally important that everyone knows what's about to occur.
Well, just handle it. You're on a roll.
Well,
I think that's really an important piece of information, because, the clock is just ticking, and, in my perspective, the part of the transformation, part of the consciousness raising that is happening is this increase in polarity between, I gave a presentation the other day, and I said, between the, everyone and the bad people.
Yeah.
And I used that word, the bad people.
Yeah,
and I had somebody take issue, with me saying the bad people. And I'm like, well, excuse me, but there are bad people.
There are.
But anyway.
I'm with you. I'm like,
I don't know.
I'm past that non-judgmental. I'm judging. And, there is a time when you need to make intelligence is judgment, okay? This namby-pamby New Age thing where you don't pass judgment is crap. You're passing judgment every moment. You're passing judgment on how good the air is that you're breathing, how good the food is you're eating, how warm you are, how cold you are, how much you like the person you're in the room with. You're constantly making judgments, and intellectually, we rely on judgments for the quality of our life. So to say that to say that being judgmental is wrong is not true at all. Everyone is always being judgmental. Even saying that being judgmental is wrong is being judgmental. So,
but skip the judgmental part. Skip the judgmental part. It's like, I'm sorry, but if somebody ripped you off, and I'm just making up an example, for $20,000, and then you turn around and go, oh, but they're good, they're just misguided.
No.
I'm sorry, I don't know anybody on this planet that would say that. And in my mind, whoever that person is for you, or whatever that is, they're the bad people. It's not a judgment thing. I mean, in my mind, I'm sorry, it's not a judgment thing.
You. I think we need to start calling people out on these things and to be courageous about it. When somebody screws up, we need to say, listen, that's a major screw up, and we don't like it. And you know, to sit around and think that there are not bad people. There are bad people. There are psychopaths. There are people who will lie and cheat and steal without 1 ounce of guilt. And to say that there aren't is extremely naive. So the first thing you need to do is not be naive about people. You need to say, okay, there's good people, there are bad people, and I had better put on my antenna so that I can tell as best as I can who is who. Some people are psychic. My wife is psychic, and she almost knows immediately when somebody's not up to snuff or not. I have a little bit of trouble because I guess I'm just raised Catholic and was taught that everybody's good, and then I had to find out that actually everyone isn't good. And actually the nuns and the priests were at the top of the list for those who weren't good, actually, now that I think about it. And so I think that, you know, we have to decide, you know, that there are bad people, there are people who are going to rip us off, there's people who are going to steal from us, there are people who may even kill us. So we have to understand that there are people who do not care. And when this thing snaps, which it is coming, the snap is coming, when that happens, those people are going to become not only glaringly obvious, but they're going to get very aggressive as their opportunities for swindle disappear. Because as the economy disappears, the opportunity for swindling it disappears because there's no money to swindle. And so the criminal class will get very, very desperate as this thing unfolds. And so what is happening? Well, we have a two-stage thing happening here. We have an incredible physical process happening, an economic, environmental process that's going on, and then we have this spiritual thing that's going on. And so people should be taking both of those into consideration. The physical part is, how am I going to live? How am I going to eat? What am I going to make? How am I going to make money? What skills are going to be useful in the coming world? And then, of course, the spiritual problem, which is, you know, what kind of spiritual world are we going to be living in? What kind of spiritual teachings do we want to pass down to our children and to our grandchildren? And I think that we're in this small window now where a lot of spiritual teachings are rising up to the top because of the internet and because of the amazing amounts of information that are coming out right now. And I think we need to gather up those things and take them with us into the new world, because I'm not making any bets that the internet is going to be around. I don't know. It may be, but I don't know. And so we have to assume the worst, and that is that there's not going to be an internet, and that we may need to take some of this stuff into book form. Libraries, local libraries are going to become very useful, I think, in the future. But also, you know, how to grow food, how to take care of community, how to take care of children, how to educate, doctoral skills like healing and nursing. These are all going to be what's really important in the future.
So let me ask you a question, because I think we kind of missed a basic point. So it's sounding like your vision of where we're going to be going is that because of our own misuse, you know, lack of concern, et cetera, we're going to create an environment where, you know, there's potentially like no electricity. There's, there was that TV show Dark Angel, which is not my book, Dark Angels, which is a great book. People should buy it. But anyway, and they had like some EMP pulse and, it didn't take them back into the Stone Age, but it kind of set everybody back, and life was just totally different.
Yeah, I think you need to read The Long Emergency by James Kunstler. It's a great book about what's about to happen. He's a journalist with Rolling Stone and a friend of mine, and he's really looked at this, and he has taken each thing that's occurring and extrapolated it forward to show where we're going to be living, and it's going to be quite a shock what's about to happen, but I think at the same time it's actually a much better world that we're headed towards, and because the stress of the modern world is so much and so deep that I don't even think we know how stressed out we are anymore. And it's just the idea of, families breaking up because corporations demand that people move all over the place. So you have families that are scattered. That's going to end. The idea that you're going to get apples from New Zealand and potatoes from South America, that's going to end. Everything's going to become fairly localized. Travel is going to become pretty much non-existent because of the energy diet that we're going to be on. And so these things are all headed our way, and we have a choice, do we accept it and try to work with it and make a better world, or do we cry and bitch because, it's so horrible that I'm not going to have an internet and as much electricity and hot water as I want. And I think you're going to see a lot of people get very unhappy when this thing comes down on them, and I don't think we're all that far away from it. And I think Obama, by the way, knows all this. If you read his interviews, he's pretty much saying that there's going to be this shift, and that this current thing is not sustainable. He doesn't know how to get there. I don't either. I have a feeling that it's not going to matter because it's just going to collapse in on us anyway. So, there's a lot of things that you need to do. You need to start looking at where you're living. You need to start looking at where you get your food from. You need to start looking at where you get your water from. You need to form alliances in your communities. There's a lot of communities on the West Coast which are getting ready for this. The one I live in is getting ready for it, all the way up to the mayor and the city council planning it. So, I think, some people are preparing for it and some people aren't, and those who aren't are going to be in very, very, very serious trouble when this occurs. And I don't know when it's going to occur. Could be, as far away as 2016, 2018. I don't know. There's another great book, which I highly recommend, called The Fourth Turning by Strauss and Howe, and that's about this thing that's about to happen also. The United States goes through a revolutionary period every 85 years. We went in the Revolution, and 85 years later was a Civil War, 85 years later was the Great Depression, and we're 85 years later. And they predicted in the 90s that the economy was going to collapse, there was possibly going to be a Civil War, all sorts of things that are now looking very, very likely. So we need to be realistic, face up to what is going on, take measures to protect ourselves and our families, and that's the physical part. And then the second part is I really think it's important to adopt a spiritual discipline of some kind to keep you calm in the middle of the maelstrom, which is swirling around us even as we speak. So I think you should find a yoga class or qigong or tai chi or walking in the forest or whatever it is, that you need to do, and do it every day, and do it with a certain discipline and a certain kind of love for it. I think those are the things that we need to do, and we need to start now. It's not coming, it's here.
I hear that. I mean, I sit there and think about all the young people, and I'm going to say the 30 and under group that, never had a TV without a remote control. They were brought up on, PlayStation and Xbox, and don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, we had a garden in our backyard, and so not that I'm a great, farmer, but at least I have a clue of what you maybe do. And I don't think from, your perspective, the kind of things that we need to do, that young people are remotely prepared to do any of these things.
Well, they're not, and it really worries me. And I spend a lot of time talking to young people, and I'm even trying to create an event called Future Shift: How to Survive and Thrive in the 21st Century, which will be a video and a website and a conferences for young people, so that we can pull them out of the desperate situation that they're in, where they're trapped in this kind of false reality, and the real world, they're really the first generation, honestly, that doesn't know how to feed themselves. Our generation...
They don't know how to cook. They don't even know how to cook.
They don't know anything, and it's a perfect storm. I mean, they're setting themselves up for a fall, and the ones, nature's great though, because nature cleans out those who are not prepared. And so the young people who are prepared, and there are a lot, believe me, who are preparing themselves, they're going to survive and thrive. And those others who are just playing on the PlayStations and stuff, they're not going to make it. And by the time they wake up and realize they're not going to make it, it's going to be too late. When you add in rising obesity rates and the fact that they can do tests of the New York water supply, and it's filled with Prozac and all sorts of antidepressants, you can see that when this thing hits, 90% of the people are going to be completely unprepared for it. That may be, by the way, a plan. I don't know. It seems to me that
they end up getting taken off all their meds, and so now you have a bunch of cranky, strung-out people.
Crazy. Believe me, you think that's not going to happen. It is going to happen. And we're not even talking about the people who, what's going to happen to the people when the welfare checks and the unemployment checks and the food stamps suddenly stop. When you add that to the meds, you got, and the amount of guns that are in this country, you got a stew that is going to boil over. And we have to be prepared for that and not say, oh, he's being so pessimistic. I'm not being pessimistic. If I was hiking down the road and you drove by and I said, listen, another 2 miles down the road, the bridge is out. Be really careful because you'll fall off the cliff. Am I being pessimistic, or am I telling you something that you need to know? And so I reject this idea that I'm being a pessimist by saying something that is grounded in reality. And I don't think it's being pessimistic at all. I think it's being actually prepared and, in a way, optimistic, because I think you're going to survive it.
Jay Weidner about his new film, Infinity, although we did get off on a 2012 thing, and we might go back there. I'm not sure. But his website is www.sacredmysteries.com. And so, Jay, we were talking before the break about, this transition that's going to happen, but there's also the piece where there are people that are going to check out. And we had talked much earlier about the life review process, which I stopped you because I think it's really important to bring that whole concept to the table, because I don't think people think about the consequences of their actions. And so I'm just going to give it to you because I know, all right, I'll just say, that was Daniel Brinkley's thing, and I think he's really funny.
I do too. He's a riot. He calls himself a redneck, and he really is.
Well, he is.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear a redneck talking like that. It's like, whoa. I think the life review is very interesting, and I think it does scare people. I showed Infinity to a wealthy businessman, and he said, I watched about 20 minutes of it. It was really good, but I had to turn it off. And I said, that's interesting, because about 20 minutes into it is when we start talking about the life review. And and in that section is where we say, or actually Daniel and Alberto and some others say, that when you die, you're going to live your entire life all over again. But you're also going to live the life of all the people that you've hurt or helped also. Now, Daniel Brinkley, who had served 2 terms in Vietnam as a Green Beret, he had a lot of hurt that he had to live through from the people that he hurt when he went through his first life review, okay? And he came back a changed man because he had been such a brutal person that he saw that he had to live through all the brutality that he had inflicted on everybody else. And believe me, that's enough to scare a lot of people from watching the rest of Infinity because they don't want to think about that. But even if you did bad things in your past, and all of us have done bad things, you're alive now. You have every chance to make up for that. So, yes, you're going to go through a life review, and yes, every person that you hurt and every person you helped, you're going to go through whatever it is that you put that person through, and that could be mighty horrible for some people. But from this moment on, you can also start living your life right and creating all those good things that you're going to live through too. All the people that you are now going to start helping with your life. And I think that's really the answer. The answer is not to be afraid of that which you have done, that which you are going to experience in your life review, but to create the best life review you can starting right now. And I don't think there's anything else to do. So go out when you're at the Safeway, go out a little bit extra to be nice to the person checking your groceries through, and at the waitress at the restaurant. Take a little bit of time to be a little bit extra nice to her, to give her a bigger tip than you normally would, because you're cheap and you don't want to be cheap. And these are the things that you need to start doing right now, and not be so afraid of that which you have already done, because you're going to go through that. There's nothing that you can do about that. None of us are perfect, and all of us are going to go through these bad things. But don't forget, you're also going to go through the good things. And there's a lot of things you did in your life which you don't even know were good. You may have said something or done something to someone, and you went off and they changed their entire life and never told you that it was you that did it. And we don't know, and that's another thing about these past life reviews that you go through when you die. There's a lot of surprises waiting for you, a lot of things that you did that were good and kind that you never knew were having the ramifications that they had. And it's actually in those selfless acts of kindness that your karma is truly created. When you did something not because you were trying to get good karma, you just did it because you knew it was the right thing to do. Standing up for people who suffered injustice, standing up to governments who are sending us off to wars that are wrong, not being afraid to speak up when you see a wrong. These things gather and aggregate into a very positive life review. And remember this, it's the most important thing, which is about courage. And when you are courageous, that makes up for a lot of the bad things that you've done. And so if you've done a lot of bad things, well, the way to get around it now is to be courageous and start doing good things from here on in, and go out of your way to do it, and go out of your way to speak the truth, and go out even when everyone starts screaming at you because you said something that irritated them. Don't be afraid. Just keep saying it. You'd be surprised how a little courage can bust up even the most strong belief systems. As soon as they see the hypocrisy of their belief system because you pointed it out, they may be mad at you in the moment, but you never know. In a year or two, you might have altered their lives completely. And we don't know. We don't know what is doing what. All we know is that we have to keep trying it.
Well, and what you're saying makes me think, since it's the holiday season, that movie, A Christmas Carol, and the character Scrooge, who was visited by Marley, who showed him his length of chain that he had been building link by link of all of the bad things that he did throughout his life. But he became a changed man. He realized that, he needed to make this change and became a wonderful, caring, and giving man. And so probably, in that life review process, he unknitted that chain of evil that he had created in the former part of his life and cleared up a bunch of his karma.
Well, he did, and that's actually a great analogy. I had not really thought about that, but that is what Scrooge goes through. He falls asleep, and he goes through a life review. That's great. I had not really thought about that. I'm going to have to see that movie again. And he
every Christmas.
Yeah, and he goes through his life review and realizes that he can still put things right. There's still a chance. And if you did 10,000 bad things and you've only got 2 years left in your life, well, that gives you 2 years to do 100,000 good things. So you can outbalance it, and you shouldn't be afraid of it. And besides, you've already done it anyway. There's no reason to be afraid of it. But I don't want you to reject the whole idea because you're afraid that you're going to have to go through the life of somebody that you did something terrible to. I'm not going to lie to you. You are going to have to go through that. And believe me, I've done bad things too, and I'm not looking forward to those aspects of my life. But what I'm trying to do now and every day is to make sure that everything that happens from here on in is completely cool so that I can have just the greatest life review I can have and forget those other things. And believe me, it's not so bad. I think probably the worst part of the past life review that we all must go through, I think, is probably just pure embarrassment of how silly and stupid we all are for most of our lives. And I think that's going to be the hardest part for me, is to see the immature, very, very silly man that I once was.
Well, and let me ask this question. How much does intentionality play in our accruing karma or creating these negative things? Because so let's say something happens, but, there wasn't any intention behind it. It happened as an accident. That might not even be a good example, but there's not an intention behind it. But the person is affected. There's a dynamic between you and another person. You don't mean to hurt the person, but the person is hurt. Does that accrue karma to you? How would something like that play out? Because it's not like they didn't mean to.
Yeah, but it's not that easy. If you're going to be abrupt or very, very, very sharp with someone, then I think you need to understand that there are ramifications, even though you didn't mean to hurt them. And by the way, hurting someone is all relative. If a little kid is in the kitchen about to touch a red-hot pan on the stove and you scream at them quickly, yes, you temporarily hurt their feelings, but in the end, you save them from getting burnt. And so it's a tricky question in a lot of incidences. If your intention was good and you came off sharp and abrupt, well, you should have not come off so sharp and abrupt. And I'm the last guy, who can talk about this because, believe me, I'm very sharp when I need to be. And I wish I could be less sharp. But at the same time, people do need to hear the truth. And if the truth hurts them, that's actually their problem, not yours. So it depends on how you do it. I think if your intentionality is to help the person, then that's part of it. But if you approached it with a very sharp and abrupt manner, well, then now that's your fault. So it's really being diplomatic. It's knowing what to say in the moment. It's also knowing what not to say. Sometimes it just pays off just to be quiet, like a Zen master says, and don't say anything. Because sometimes you can't solve any problem. You have to let the person go all the way deep into the darkness before they can solve the problem for themselves, and I'm sure we've all been through that. And so there is an intentionality behind it. At the same time, if you're being nice to someone just to get their money, then you're not really being nice. Your intentionality betrays the apparent altruism, and it's really just altruism disguised as greed disguised as altruism. So yeah, I mean, you got to be careful in both ways. You can't just pretend to be nice to people because you're trying to get something from them. That's bad karma too. So your intentionality plays a big, huge role in this whole thing. And I've actually reached the conclusion that possibly it's better to not have any intentions about anything, because even the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and sometimes we may not know what we're really creating when we do things. And the Zen masters say, don't do anything if you're in doubt, and that might be good advice. I don't know.
I mean, my philosophy of living is I do what Spirit tells me. People go, well, what are you going to be doing next year or in 5 years? It's like, I don't know. They haven't told me yet. And when they tell me, I can let you know, because I might be working on something in the moment. And once that's done, it's kind of like, okay, ready for a new project. What's next? And then they tell me, and I work on that.
Yeah, that's what I do too. It's kind of the I use the analogy of the of a surfer. I used to be a big surfer when I was younger, and a surfer needs a certain amount of athletic talent. It's true, but what the surfer to be really successful needs is this intuitive ability to know where the wave is going and to adjust their body to that knowledge. And so a good surfer is not necessarily a good athlete. A good surfer is one who knows where the flow is going and positions themselves to be in the best part of that flow. And I think that's what I try to do. I consider the wave to be spirit, and I am me on the board in the ocean of spirit, and I'm constantly looking to see which way that wave is cresting so that I can position myself to ride on the wave with the least amount of energy expended. And people, that irritates a lot of people who live this kind of life, or other people find it very irritating because it looks like everything is coming easy to that person. So easy. Oh, you're creating all this stuff. How do you do it? How can you keep producing and making all the books and movies and everything? And I could only do a tenth of what you're doing. And it's like, no. If you rode the wave and you just followed which way the wave was pushing instead of you trying to force the wave, you would find that life is a hell of a lot easier. And so that's what I try to do. And people think that I'm like I have some gift from God that allows me to produce, but actually I don't really even work that hard. It just looks like I work hard. And I think that, good surfers are the same thing. They're not really working that hard. They're just kind of tilting the board in the way that they see the wave coming and then let the wave do all the work. And I think that's really
But they're not trying to control the wave. The wave is, and they get on the wave, where a lot of people want to say, well, this is where I want the wave to go, and this is how I want the wave to be, and then are disappointed or pissed off when that doesn't happen.
That's right, and you can't force a situation. And I think, all really good athletes know this, and that's why they almost achieve a kind of a mystical attitude about life, the really good ones. Like Babe Ruth used to claim that he could actually see the stitchings on the ball as it raced by him at 98 miles an hour, which seems almost unbelievable because the human eye could never really pick up that, you would think. But I think he probably could see the stitches on the ball. He probably could freeze the ball in time and space and knew exactly where to hit it. And I think when you see a great athletic performance, you're seeing this, or a great artistic performance like a great dance. You're seeing that in action. But to live that outside the worlds of the art and sports, that's a trick. That's our serious trick, and that's a trick that, we should all be trying to learn. And, we can use the analogy of Obama again. If Obama would just kind of ride the wave instead of trying to push the wave around, I think he'd be doing a lot better. And I think his move in Afghanistan is going to backfire on him because he's trying to force the wave. And you can't. You just can't force that wave. And I'm not sure there's any wave in Afghanistan that anyone can ride to any
It's a desert. They didn't tell you that?
Yes, I did know that. It's not a good place to go surfing. Unless you're going to go snow surfing. So I think he was riding that wave so well during the election. He was so perfect. He knew exactly which way to go. He never looked rancored or upset by anything. But I think since he's been in office, he's letting the wave. He's trying to push the wave around, and the wave is way too big to be pushed around. And I think he needs to ride it. He needs to assure us that he's riding that wave instead of the other way around. But he may be caught up in such a tumult right now that he can't even figure out where he's going, which wouldn't surprise me. I just did a TV show with Jesse Ventura, and he told me that
conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I'm going to be on
great
January
show.
13th. Yeah, I'll be on January 13th.
Well, I'll be watching you on TV going, I know that guy.
Yeah, well, Jesse's a great guy. He told me that that when he was governor, that it's like being on a treadmill 24 hours a day, and the treadmill's turned all the way up to 10. And he said, there's no getting off. You just keep going. And I think that when you're caught in that kind of situation, you kind of lose your objectivity. And I think that's what's going on with all these politicians, which is why we can't rely on politicians, because the nature of the beast kind of snuffs them out in a way as soon as they get in there. And that's why I think we have to start rejecting the whole thing, building parallel cultures and societies, and they will follow us. And I think we're actually doing it. I think the people in the 60s made a lot of mistakes, but now that they're in their late 50s and 60s, they realize their mistakes, and some of us are trying to regroup, influence the young. And that's another reason why I made Infinity the ultimate trip, was so that the young could see that that there's something there beyond just their little lives, which is, the West just constantly wants you to believe that all there is this one life, there's nothing else, and you got to just grab everything you can now. And it's not true. And you don't want to grab everything that you can now, because you may be creating a really crappy life review when you die. And you don't want that. You really don't want that.
Well, I think that, there's a certain level of, the energy of entitlement with young people today, and that whole disposable society. It's like, well, I had my iPhone or whatever, and I dropped it I threw it to my friend across the room, and it broke. Aren't you going to buy me a new one? Like, no. But there are a lot of parents that would say, oh, little Johnny, you broke your $500 iPhone. Okay, this weekend we're going to go get a new one. I mean, I'm not making this up.
Oh, I know you're not. I'm astonished by what I'm seeing out there. And that's another thing, this over-coddling of young people. It's really got to stop. I mean, these people are just destroying their children. And personally, we raised our son, and there was no TV allowed in the house, no computers. He couldn't use computers, nothing. Everything had to be drawn out by hand. We insisted that everything be written down in handwriting, and everybody said, "Oh, you're crippling him. When he gets into the world, he's not going to know how to do anything." And I was like, "Oh, crap. That's not true." Within 1 year out of getting out of high school, he was as computer literate in college as anybody else. So these people that think that, but on top of all that, he had learned how to read. He had read every night instead of watching TV, and he had a full life before being caught up in the material world. And I say that's what everyone should do. Just pull the plug on all of that crap with your kids. Read to your children. Take walks in the woods. grow a garden, learn how to do things with them. But my God, don't waste your children's life by giving them video games and watching TV and all of that. You might as well just give up. You talk about having a very, very bad life review. If you're doing that to your kids, you're going to live through the hell that they're going to live through because you made them so dysfunctional. So, you may have a temporary peace because they're caught in front of the television and not screaming and yelling and causing you pain, but in the end, you're going to pay dearly for not helping those kids function in this world in a real way. And I don't know. I see these kids, and I just don't know what's going to happen next. I really don't.
Well, I mean, the other day, my son was going on a job interview, and he texted me, and he goes, polo shirt or shirt with tie? And I said, well, shirt with tie, kind of based on the position. I said, but not wrinkled. And so he texted me back, and he goes, well, it's a good thing you taught me how to iron. And it's like... But, you don't think about it, but a 20-year-old boy these days probably doesn't know how. Take it out of the dryer, shake it out.
No, they don't. They don't, and it's. I don't know. At this point, it's going to have to get radical, or we're gonna lose these kids. And I hate to say this because I'm not really a conspiracy theorist, but I have to say.
But you're going to be on that show.
Well, I know, but it does look like it's by design. It doesn't look like it's an accident. It looks like they're being retarded, socially retarded, and it's being done on purpose. And that's my conclusion. And my brother is a high up in a school system somewhere in this country, and he told me that he's been watching for 30 years the intentional dumbing down of students. The math books are getting more and more stupid until it used to be you had to know some rudimentary algebra by the time you were a sophomore. Now you don't even have to have it when you're a senior. He said they threw out diagramming sentences. He said no one knows how to speak anymore. He said what they're doing is they're not teaching them how to think. They're teaching them what to think. And I think that is almost criminal. I really do. And I may decry the Catholics, but I'll tell you what, I was raised in a Catholic school system, and those nuns did teach me how to think. And I think that's a difference. I don't think even the Catholics are teaching this anymore. So I think they've all abandoned this kind of attitude of how to critically review a subject, how to analyze it, how to break it down, how to put it back together, how to find out what is wrong with it, how to find out what is right with it. I think all these things are disappearing, and in that is going to be a lot of very, very, very bad things. However, I want to clear one thing up. There are groups like the Wilderness Youth Groups out of California. These guys are taking kids, and God knows how long it'll be before they get sued. They're taking kids out into the wilderness for 2 weeks without anything, no jackets, no heavy clothing, no knives, nothing. They simply show up at a place and they go out into the wilderness for 2 weeks, and they come back and they know how to build campfires without matches. They know how to hunt. They know how to get all the indigenous food in the area. They know how to build shelters. And these are 12-year-old kids, and I've seen them. And they come back completely altered, completely changed from the spoiled, television-ridden kids that they were when they left on these wilderness trips to full human beings, fully awake, mature, and it happens in 2 weeks. So there is a lot of good stuff going on. We just can't tell the government, that's all.
Well, I mean, between TV and then the medication that is just passed out like candy at schools, I mean, I'm sure you've read Brave New World, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, and there's, everybody got soma. And I'm like, yep. TV is the soma of the 21st century. Here, just go sit in front of that tube. Uh-huh.
Well, Aldous Huxley was one of them, and he wrote that because he'd seen the plans. He knew the plans. He was part of the ruling elite. And he tried to warn us in that book. as did Orwell in 1984. They're both trying to warn us about what is in the plans. So the plans are to turn us into a kind of a sexless automaton who is guided by television and drugs to serve the economic needs of the ruling elite. And I say life is better than that, and I don't want to spend my life doing that.
Sexless? Boof! Question, and actually a little dialogue going on in the chat room, which I think is a good place for us to go. So the question is how would we create an opening to consider change? And then someone posted this comment, is this like taking a personal responsibility revolution? Is that what you're suggesting, a personal responsibility revolution?
Heaven forbid. Yeah, that's what
well,
I say.
Her comment was, I love it. So, but I told her that I said that I would find out.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that what we've done is the exact opposite of that. We've let everybody make the decisions for us. And we know that the decisions that are being made for us are really bad decisions, and we're still letting them do it. And I'm saying that maybe our new favorite word should be no. You know, they say something, we say no, we're not doing that. No. Sorry, nice try. Go back and come up with something else because we're not doing that one. And we need to all just say no. We just say no, we're not doing it. And they're going to get very frustrated and they're going to go away. And but if we don't start saying no to them and start saying yes to what we think is the right thing, which is very likely the right thing, we're going to be in huge trouble. And so far we're not doing it. And I'm really trying to show people that first off, you're not going to die. They're not going to kill you because you stood up to them. In fact, if anything, they're going to scurry like rats when you turn on the light in the kitchen. And nature loves courage and removes barriers to the courageous, for the courageous. And I can only say that I used to be afraid of everything. And I decided about 25 years ago that I wasn't going to shut up anymore. I was going to start saying exactly what it is that I feel about what I see going on. And everyone told me that I was going to get killed by the government and they're going to put me in a concentration camp and shut up and just do my bit and everything. And I found exactly the opposite. As soon as I started saying it, people started clamoring to hear more. They weren't, and no one threatened me. I've never been threatened by anybody. I think they're actually, if they're anything, they're actually intrigued, but there's somebody actually saying something outside of their purview. So I don't buy the whole thing of the government as this big, huge watchdog. I think the government doesn't even know what's going on, and they're more confused than we are. That's what I'm trying to say. We know intrinsically what to do. We know exactly what to do. We need to do it. We need to just do it. We need to do it without seeking the approval of friends and family and the media and politicians. We need to just get some courage, bite the big one, and go do it. And we got to do it now. And you're not going to die. You're going to have to come back here. Nothing is going to be as easy as dying to get out of here. So you need to get over the fact that you're going to die and get out of here, because it ain't going to happen. You're going to come right back in. Whatever world you're leaving behind is exactly the world that you're going to have to face again. And so you need to start making this world. You're never going to make this world perfect, but my God, we can make it better than it is right now. And we need to reject everything that they do. They're everything. We don't want any of it. We don't want their money. We don't want their medical system. We don't want anything from them. If you fall into the trap of saying, oh, well, they're going to give me health care, they're not going to give you health care. They've never told you the truth ever in your entire life. Why are you going to believe them now? It's ridiculous. And the health care is, they're going to outlaw alternative health care. At first, you're going to think, oh, it's all right. But then pretty soon, they're going to say, oh, well, if you teach yoga, you're going to need a 4-year degree from a yoga college. If you teach Tai Chi, you need a 4-year degree. You're going to need, they're going to come in, they're going to over-regulate the entire system and destroy all the good things that are in it right now. I can go down and get, my health care takes care of acupuncture and massage and all sorts of things. That's all going to disappear. And it's going to be just pharmaceutically based. So forget any kind of hope that they're going to come from without. It comes from you. It comes from inside you. You already know what to do. Now go do it.
And the part that's so scary about that one piece, because I do alternative health stuff. I mean, I'm a naturopath and a medical intuitive. I mean, that's most of my business. And no kidding. But it's not just me. It's not, there's me. I mean, that would really suck. But there's everyone else that does that kind of work. There are the massage therapists. But then you sit there and you take it upstream. There are the people that sell herbal supplements. There are the companies that manufacture herbal supplements or manufacture massage tables. And it's a whole industry. I had gone to a lecture, this had to have been 12 years ago, on alternative health, and I thought it was kind of like about alternative health. And it was a bunch of doctors sitting around a room. It was a conference room, so it wasn't like 3 guys sitting at a table. And they put up this one slide that I don't remember what the conference was about other than this one slide. And they put up a pie chart, and they said, this is how much money is spent on alternative health based on the full amount of money spent on health care. And it was maybe an eighth of the pie, so it wasn't a huge piece of the pie, but it was a significant piece of the pie. And then the turnaround comment was, and all of that is paid for out of pocket. And I was like, oh, so you just want people to have to pay you out of pocket because you're going to get more money as opposed to dealing with the insurance companies. And not much after that, like Johnson & Johnson came out with their little herbal aspirins and herbal this and that. And it's like, oh, you all want to get in on that alternative market because people will pay out of pocket because they don't want to use the system.
That's right, and that's a really good point. And this, I know naturopaths that will not use the system anymore because they're just overwhelmed by the amount of paperwork that the insurance companies are forcing on them, and so they're just telling their patients that they're not going to even accept it. And this is not going to get any better under a national health insurance plan. It's going to get worse. They're going to outlaw people like you. At first, it's going to look like it's all great, and then everybody. But after a few years, you're going to slowly see this kind of destruction of the entire alternative health system. And the reason this is because the people that are making this new healthcare system are the pharmaceutical companies. That's who's designing it. It's the healthcare companies. You think that the Democrats are going to pass a bill where you're going to get fined $3,000 for not having health insurance? Who do you think's behind that? It's the health insurance companies that are behind it. They want you to get their crappy health insurance, and they want to force you into it. And so this thing is just, it's not going to work. And every time we rely on some kind of central authority to give us something, all they do is take it away. And that's what's going to happen here. And I'm not even getting into the idea that they're going to add 40 million people by their own figures to the health rolls, because there's 40 million people who supposedly are not without insurance right now, but they're not adding any doctors. So you're going to add 40 million people onto the healthcare rolls without adding any doctors. I'm sorry, there's only one word to explain what's going to happen there. It's going to be rationed. You're going to call your doctor.
The doctors don't want to participate in this.
They don't, of course not. Who would want to participate in that nightmare? And so I don't know. It's a trick. The whole thing is a dirty, rotten trick. I hate to say it. And the Democrats, they're telling us that they're doing it for us, but if you examine the bill, and by the way, they're passing legislation right now that says that they don't want to post any more bills on the Internet. You know why they're doing that?
Huh?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yes, they're passing legislation right now. It's up. I forget who. Waxman, Henry Waxman, is putting it up. The FDA inside guy in Congress. That the Senate and the Congress no longer have to put bills up on the Internet to be read by us before they're passed. Now this happened because the people read the original health bill and started protesting at the town hall hearings, and everyone said, "Oh, they're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about." Well, I'm sorry. No, you're wrong. The people that were protesting are the ones who read the bill. I read the bill. It scared the living daylights out of me. And anyone who thinks that, that bill is a good bill is out of their mind. And you will regret it when it's passed. And apparently it's going to pass either today or tomorrow.
Yeah, but which one are you talking about? The one where you have jail time, no jail time, death committees. I mean, I just hear these horror stories, but it seems like there's multiple versions, and they're going to fight over, which version is the less awful of the awful versions, and that's the one they're going to pick, maybe. But, throw in a couple of, what are those little extra bills?
Earmarks.
Earmarks. I keep thinking pig things.
Earmarks for sure. Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. And again, we fell into a trap where we thought that we had a Messiah who was going to save us, and now we know. Well, if you've read the bills that are out there, the various bills, we now know from anyone who's read them that this is much worse than what we have right now. And I don't know where it's going to go. I'm even thinking of leaving the country because I don't really want to be involved in a healthcare system that is so horrible. And I just don't. I mean, if I have enough money to pay for something and I decide to do it, I want to be able to do it. And I don't think I want anyone to tell me that I can't do it. And not because of my age or my economic worth or any of it. And so I think that's actually the health care bill is going to be the spark that triggers the foment for a gigantic shift and change, which I predict will come somewhere between now and 2016, probably right around 2012 is when it's going to happen. And it's going to be momentous, and it's going to be a great thing. I'm very optimistic about it, and I don't want people to think I'm not, because I'm horrified at this health care bill, which I am, as anyone who really cares about health care should be, because it isn't about health care. It's about power. It's a power grab. It has nothing to do with health care. As you well know, if you're an alternative physician and a naturopath, then you already know what I'm telling you. And I've been telling all my friends who are naturopaths that they're going to be out of business, and they all know it. It's amazing. They go, I know, I'm going to be put out of business. And I just think that, we need to tell people in the new age who think that this is a great thing that maybe it isn't such a good thing, and maybe we need to back off a little bit, re-examine the whole thing, and come back later with a different plan.
Well, I mean, there's supposed to be the provision where if you don't have health insurance, you're going to be forced to buy it or be fined or go to jail.
And then it was that?
I know. And then it was estimated that for like a family of 4, it would cost around $12,000 a year to provide coverage. Okay, so let's even just cut that in half. Let's say $6,000 a year. So if you're working at McDonald's and you got a family and you're working 3 jobs, you don't got that kind of money to buy insurance. I mean, you're lucky that you can put food on the table and gas in the car.
Exactly.
And I don't know anybody that's been to the supermarket lately. No inflation except the $100 shopping bill turned into $250 in the last few months, and there's nothing in your cart.
No, in fact, I spent $35 yesterday, and I had packed everything into one of the smallest bag that they had at the store. a little tiny bag had $35 worth of food in it. I was like, my God, I'm going to eat this in 5 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, this is what's going on. The shift it's a catastrophic shift, and the politicians are running around telling us they're taking care of business, but they're not, and all the things that they're offering are just going to make it worse. You know, the Tao Te Ching, which is really my favorite book, it says that, you know, those who make laws, those who make more laws only create more outlaws. And I really believe that. I really believe that this constant trying to force a situation is just making everything worse. And we need to quit forcing. It's the surfing analogy again. We keep trying to make the wave do what we want it to do instead of just following the wave. And it's got disaster written all over it because the hubris of the human mind, especially the Western human mind, thinks that it can control everything. And it can't. It's just an illusion. And that reality, the virtual reality of the economy and everything that they've set up is all collapsing in front of us, right in front of our face. And some people are saying, oh, it's horrible, it's horrible. I say, hallelujah.
So, Jay, we have about 9 minutes, 8-9 minutes left. Do you have any last words for the listeners?
Well, I mean, you know, I think we have to, like I said before, we have to reject their world, and we have to start building a new world. And I really can't emphasize enough that I think people really need to begin to create their own communities, their own food sources, make sure you have a clean water supply, buy Sacred Mysteries DVDs and take them with you so that when you're out in the middle with your community, you can watch high-quality DVDs over and over again, like Infinity, The Ultimate Trip, and also our new Qigong series, and all of them. And bring books with you that you're going to need, like How to Grow Food and How to Can, and maybe pick up a musical instrument and learn how to play. That's going to become very useful. And also, you know, the skills that we think that we need in this world are not going to be very useful in that world. So if you're going to college or you're sending your kids to college and they're getting a degree in business administration or in marketing or in advertising or media, they're probably not going to have a job when they get out. So, I mean, if they're going in for any kind of health care, they may be all right. But really and truly, I think, you know, kids today, they really need to learn how to pound a nail and how to saw a board and how to chop firewood. These are going to be the skills that are going to become very, very important as we get closer and closer to this big collapse. And meditate. Find something to do to keep yourself calm in the middle of all this. That's all I can say, you know.
Yeah, because I guess there's not going to be any, Prozac flying around.
No.
Well, there might be if you pay your insurance, your, mandatory health insurance.
Well, that's true. Although I kind of doubt it. But boy, getting rid of those drugs, I think that's going to be the best thing that ever happened to us. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I hope the drugs disappear and go away forever. Because I think they've been really bad, all of them, Prozac and all of them. I don't think they're helping anybody or anything. And in fact, I have to be honest with you, I did not even realize how prevalent those drugs were until just a few years ago when I noticed a lot of aberrant behavior among young people. And so I started asking people, are you on Prozac? Are you on these drugs? And guys started coming back, and 95 out of 100 were either on them or had been on them. And that really shocked me. That really shocked me, because why do they need to have these behavior modification drugs? What in the world is going on that children need to take these things? And
because they don't know how to go outside and climb a tree. They never learned. You know, they just learned how to sit in front of a computer or a TV set, and they never learned how to use their energy other than in a static place. And if you just sit all day and don't do anything to exercise your body or your mind, you can have issues. I can totally see that happening.
I guess so. I grew up, and my mom and dad had to practically come out at 10 o'clock every night and beg me to come in. I mean, I would never.
Look at you.
Yeah, I just can't imagine, living a life while watching TV. Nothing could have been more boring to me as a kid. And so I don't know. I guess it is a different world, but I think that our world that we grew up in is more the norm, and what they've grown up with in the last 40 years is the abnormal. And when the abnormal hits reality, it's not a pleasant sight, and I think that's going to happen very soon. So, I mean, I beg people with kids to get them off those drugs, get them into a wilderness youth program, get them into a spiritual discipline, get them almost in some
Turn
ways
off
out of
the
school.
TV. How's that?
TV, yeah. Maybe even, reject the school system. I hate to sound like a total radical, but I reject the entire school system at this point. I don't think that they're teaching anything worth a damn, honestly. I think I can teach math better than any school teacher that my son ever had. And so I think also the Internet's going to make that possible, too, so we're going to be able to find alternative ways to educate, and it's all going to collapse, and it's a good thing. I know it sounds pessimistic, but it isn't. It's a positive thing, and I'm for it, and I'm doing everything I can to encourage the collapse and the rebuilding, because if you have a collapse but you don't have an alternative, then what good are you? And so we need to begin creating the alternative, which is why I do shows like this, because I want there to be a dialogue starting now as to what it is we're doing and where we're going. And I actually believe it is starting, because I'm seeing it showing up various places where it shouldn't show up. So the message is getting out very, very slowly, but it is getting out.
That's good. So I'm like going, well, I'll ask, I think we just lost Jay. His number dropped off. Jay, are you there? Well, we lost Jay, but we only have a couple of minutes left, and we actually have a very interesting show coming up next week.